with that, I will turn to our amazing reviser for a brief overview. Tamara?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman, and good afternoon, committee. Substitute for House Bill 2102, as amended by the House Committee, would do two things. First, the bill would enact a new section of law that would require school districts to enroll any military student prior to the student physically residing in Kansas if the student provides evidence that the student's parent or person acting as parent will be stationed at a military installation in the state during the current or immediately succeeding school year. This requirement would apply to students in K-12 and any pre-K students if the school district operates a pre-K program and the student meets the eligibility requirements for that pre-K program. The military student would not have to provide proof of an address at the time of enrollment, but residency in the district may be required if there are no open seats in the district under the Kansas open enrollment law. Additionally, if the student has an IEP or 504 plan, the school district would have to take appropriate measures to ensure that the student receives the required services upon attending school. The second thing the bill does is amend the Interstate Compact on Educational Opportunity for Military Children to correct federal statutory citations. Currently, the compact references Section 1209 and 1211 of the United States Code, but that reference should be to Chapter 1209 and 1211. The bill does make that correction in two places. House Bill 2102 would take effect on July 1 upon publication in the statute book, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Beth Tamara, and I believe Chairwoman Erickson is on WebEx as well. Do I have any questions for Tamara from the committee? All right, seeing none, spectacular job, thank you. With that, committee, we will turn to WebEx for our first proponent, Michelle Reichert, Midwest Regional Liaison, Defense State Liaison Office. Michelle, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Chair and honorable members of the committee, on behalf of military families and the Department of Defense, I'm happy to testify in support of the policy changes proposed in House Bill 2102, a bill that addresses advanced enrollment in special education for military families. My name is Michelle Reichert. I'm the Midwest Region Liaison for the Department of Defense State Liaison Office, operating under the direction of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. We hope that Kansas will join the more than 40 states which have already enacted similar advanced enrollment policies. Approximately 185,000 U.S. military children move between schools each year. Military service members are routinely reassigned to new duty stations in the summer due to mission and training requirements. As a result of these summer moves, they may potentially miss their child's school registration and other important application deadlines that occur in the spring. Long-term negative impacts include having to shift their planned courses of education or study, which may require them to take courses in summer school or even force them to graduate later than their peers. Service members typically receive official orders prior to military orders detailing their upcoming assignment 30 days to 6 months prior to their move, allowing military families to enroll their children, including children eligible to receive special education services, register for classes, and apply for specialized programs the same time as their peers prior to physically arriving to their school location will help facilitate their uninterrupted educational progress and smooth integration into their new communities. It will also relieve unneeded stress due to their transition between locations. With 15,164 active duty military children in the state, Kansas is in a unique position to have a positive effect on the educational experiences of military children and their families. While Guard and Reserve service members do not typically move as often, this policy will also positively impact those families when they do. The intent of this policy is not to offer an advantage or priority over other students, but simply to provide military families access to educational programs and courses at the same time as their in-state peers. No new online systems are required, and there is the added benefit to school districts by reducing the discrepancy between the projected and actual school enrollment numbers for staffing purposes. It is also important to clarify, as this policy does, that special education, those with special education needs are included. Recent studies have shown that military families and schools alike do not typically assume that advanced enrollment includes those with special education needs unless it is explicit in the statute. A Partners in Promise study found that only 16% of respondents that had special education needs have ever been able to use advanced enrollment for their student, despite their state having advanced enrollment policies. Of those who have never used advanced enrollment, 78% of those were told it was because it was not an option for them. In fact, if a school is able to get a student's special education plan prior to arrival, they will be in a better situation and better situated to provide immediate comparable services. In closing, we are grateful for the tremendous efforts that Kansas has historically made to support our military members and their families. And we appreciate the opportunity to support the policies reflected in this bill. Thank you for taking the time to consider this issue, and I stand by for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Richard, and I apologize for saying your name incorrectly, but we thank you for being here. And yes, please stick around for questions if you would. Now, committee, I will turn your attention to in-person testimony from Lieutenant Colonel Keith Marshall. Welcome back, sir, to our committee.
All right, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Lieutenant Colonel Keith Marshall with the Kansas Adjutant General's Department. I think between the revisor and the previous conferee, they covered most of the testimony that I have, so I won't go through anything that they've already mentioned. Michelle talked a little bit about active duty versus National Guard, and as National Guardsmen, she's correct. We don't typically move as frequently as our active duty counterparts do, but we do still move from time to time. I've moved out of the state of Kansas and back to Kansas 4 times since 2008. So this is a bill that would benefit families like mine when we do have to move around for our National Guard duties. But we support it not just for National Guard families, but for all military families. This is a good bill for military families, military children. We appreciate all the cooperation of the various stakeholders of this bill as it moved through the House side. It underwent a lot of changes and revisions, and it was a good cooperative effort between all the stakeholders, and especially want to thank the Kansas Department of Education for their input on the bill and what it looks like now. So with that, Mr. Chairman, just stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Very good, sir. Thank you. And committee, we do have proponent written testimony from Shannon Kimball from Kansas Association of School Boards as well. So this time I'll open it up for questions for the proponents. Senator Gossage.
Yes, this would actually be for Tamara. Tamara, as I'm looking through the bill, I really only see like the new section 1. Was there some change that I'm missing as part of the compact?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Senator, so if you look on page 2, in line 37, it strikes section and inserts chapter. And it also does that on page 4 in line 23. That is the only change to that compact.
And what does that do? Change section to chapter.
My understanding is that was an incorrect reference and we were just updating, so it's
Okay, so really not a change to the compact per se.
correct.
Okay, thank you. I thought maybe I was missing something. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? Senator Petty.
This is really for Tamara as well. So Tamara, it appears that there is clarification in here that a military person that gets advanced enrollment, that they do then have to verify that they actually have an address that is in that school district once they have moved. And then if not, they would be considered under open enrollment.
Yes, so the bill provides that no proof of address would be required at the time of the advanced enrollment, but residency within the district may be required for attendance in that district if the district they're trying to enroll in does not have any open seats under the open enrollment law. Because if you'll recall, under the open enrollment law, military students are not subject to the lottery, but they do have to be open seats if they're out of district.
Just a follow-up. So they would only be subjected, or they would only have to provide that address if there were no positions available because of open enrollment? Sorry. Well,
I think ultimately, at some point, they will have to provide an address to the school district of where they reside, but at the time of their advance enrollment, they may or may not have a permanent physical address in the state. So at the time of the advance enrollment, they do not have to provide proof of that address to the school district. However, if there are no open seats in that school district, they would have to provide evidence of residency in the school district if the open enrollment law wouldn't apply to them.
Thank you.
Further questions, committee? Very good. Seeing none, we will now turn to the opponent testimony. And opponent testimony is closed. I will now close the hearing on House Bill 2102, and we will now open the hearing on House Bill 2185, and we will once again turn to your friend and mine, our reviser Tamara, for an overview.
Thank you again. All right, House Bill 2185, as amended by House Committee, would amend 2 National Guard Education Assistance Programs, the Kansas National Guard Educational Assistance Act, and the Educational Masters for Enhanced Readiness and Global Excellence, or EMERGE. So first, on the Educational Assistance Act, this act would be expanded to include dependents of National Guard members. So currently, the act provides for financial assistance to Guard members, and that is subject to appropriations. Senate Bill 2185 would expand the eligibility for the program benefits to dependents of National Guard members. Dependents include individuals who are sponsored by the National Guard member and who are registered as an eligible dependent of the sponsoring Guard member in the Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System. To participate in the program, the dependent would be required to hold a high school diploma or high school equivalency credential, be enrolled at a Kansas post-secondary educational institution, not hold a bachelor's degree or higher, and they would also have to complete and submit the Kansas Student Aid application. Assistance for any such dependents would be made available after Guard member benefits have been funded. So second, on the EMERGE program, the bill would expand this program to include graduate degree programs other than master's degrees. So currently, EMERGE provides financial assistance subject to appropriations for National Guard members in a master's degree program. It does require those participants to serve in good standing in the National Guard for at least 48 months after completing their degree. House Bill 2185 would expand the program to include Guard members who are accepted into professional degree programs or doctorate degree programs. And participants in these programs would be required to serve for 72 months and have a GPA of at least 3.0 to remain eligible for the program. The bill would take effect on July 1 upon publication in the statute book. It did pass the House on a vote of 112 to 6, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tamara. Committee questions for the reviser. Senator Petty.
So, Tamara, is under the dependent definition, which is on page 2, is an eligible dependent of the sponsoring eligible Guard member in the Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System. Do you know anything about that system?
I do not, but I'm guessing someone in the room probably.
Okay, so we'll wait for that when they testify. So I had that question. And then, so I guess to follow up with that, so with this, if this legislation passed, then a person that is in the military they can't be taking advantage of the program, or they could have, I guess that was my question. Could they have already taken advantage of the program, and then when they're not, once they have finished their degree, would they then be eligible to have their dependent take advantage of the program?
So if you look at the bottom of page 2, starting in line 41, it does say eligible Guard members may either personally participate or sponsor a dependent to participate.
Okay, so I saw that, but I wasn't sure if that meant once they were through. Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then the last question I had, under and I think I don't have another question, sorry.
Committee, further questions? Senator Sykes.
It says they have to agree in writing to serve actively in good standing with the National Guard or in a duty status affiliated with the National Guard for not less than 72 months. I'm assuming whatever agreement that is signed has provisions in there to deal with if the member can no longer meet that requirement. So, so if you look in subsection D, which is on page 7 there, starting in line 25, that section does speak to failure of any eligible Guard member who had received payments. Yeah.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. I remember my question. This is dealing with an eligible Guard member. And I'm looking at that definition that's on page 5, starting in line 40. I didn't quite understand that includes non-concurrent Guard members accepted into an eligible professional degree program if they are qualified to join the Kansas National Guard. Does that mean you don't have to be in the National Guard yet?
Let me look into that. I want to make sure I'm giving you the right answer. And if someone else behind me can't answer, I will make sure you get that.
Further questions, committee? Very good. Seeing none, thank you, Tamara. All right, committee, we will turn to our proponent testimony. Once again, we welcome back Lieutenant Colonel Keith Marshall. It's been a while, sir. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to see you again as well. Members of the committee, Lieutenant Colonel Keith Marshall with the Adjutant General's Department. I'm going to go ahead and answer Senator Petty's questions up front because I'll probably forget them if I don't. So, Senator, on the defense enrollment eligibility system called DEERS, it's essentially a nationwide database of military personnel and their families. So when somebody applies to be in the program, our education office will check in that system and verify that they are eligible and that their dependent is registered appropriately in that system. And so we do all that before we pass it over to the Board of Regents, all those verifications. And then the other piece, remind me your second question.
The definition for eligible Guard member.
Yes, so where that comes from is we have some critically undermanned career fields like in the medical and legal areas. And so what this is intended to do is we can, if they show interest in going to graduate school for one of those professional degrees, and we can put them into one of those vacant positions, we can go ahead and enlist them in the Kansas National Guard, and then they can go to school under this program. So they would not be eligible to receive the benefits until they have enlisted in the Kansas National Guard. But this allows us to use the program to bring them into a vacant spot in the Kansas National Guard, if that makes sense. Okay. All right, so Mr. Chairman, as the revisor mentioned, there are two tuition assistance programs that cover National Guard scholarships in Kansas. One is called the Kansas National Guard Education Assistance Act. That is for undergraduate. And then the Emerge program is for master's degrees. So what we're asking for is just a policy update to bring those programs in line with what exists in the federal GI Bill already and what other state National Guards are offering. The goal is to retain our people and also be able to compete for the best recruits nationally. And we're not asking for any additional scholarship money. This is a policy-only update that we're asking for. So I'll address the Kansas National Guard Education Assistance Act first. This is the one that provides undergraduate tuition and fees for Kansas National Guard members attending a Kansas institution. The service commitment is 2 years beyond the last semester of school that they complete. And so that doesn't change with if we were to open it up for dependents. So if the dependent goes to school, whatever the last semester the dependent completes, then the service member has to stay in the service for 2 more years beyond that. And so what our proposal is to allow members to pass unused portions of their state tuition assistance to one dependent. That's similar to what can be done with the GI Bill. it's similar to what 17 other states in the National Guard do in their states. We need to remain competitive with other states because our personnel do shop around, and they're very savvy about figuring out which states offer what different benefits and how that fits with their lives. So we could very easily lose somebody across state lines if Colorado or Oklahoma is offering a benefit that we don't, that they think would be beneficial. So that's what we're trying to maintain our competitive edge with our neighboring states by doing this. So some people will never use their tuition assistance themselves, whether they have a degree already or whether they have no desire to go to school themselves. But if they can pass it down to a dependent, then that will keep them in uniform in the Kansas National Guard for a longer period of time. And then the Emerge Act. So I do want to highlight that the piece where you can pass it down to a dependent is only for that undergraduate portion. It's not for Emerge. So Emerge is only for the service member themselves. And no dependents can be funded in that program until all service members are funded at 100%. So we have to pay for our military personnel first, and then with whatever money is left over under this bill, that would be passed down to the dependent. Emerge was a bill that was passed last year. This is a great expansion for our members that are seeking advanced education. As of right now, it only includes master's degrees. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of personnel who are seeking to do advanced degrees that do not technically qualify under a master's degree. So whether it's a professional degree or a doctorate, and some of those are needed to hold advanced positions in the Kansas National Guard. So if we can pay for someone to get that education, we can fill a vacancy that we've had for years and years, and it's really hard for us to recruit to that. So that's what we're trying to accomplish through this. We're trying to build our individual and unit readiness, improve our recruiting and retention, and just make our force stronger and more able to respond to disasters in the state of Kansas and emergencies around the world. Had a great team working on this as well. We have a great partnership with the Kansas Board of Regents in this program, and we appreciate all the support that they provide. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next committee, we have Elaine Frisbee, Vice President for Finance and Administration, Kansas Board of Regents. Welcome to our committee, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Happy to be here today, members of the committee. Here to be support for the program. I think you've heard all about it and don't need a whole lot of more information. What I would also emphasize is this is funding that we administer in 2 state financial aid programs that is available to students going to all 32 public institutions, so a technical college, community college, a public university, as well as the private nonprofit schools. So you've got a lot of choice for the National Guard tuition program. And then that's from a certificate all the way up to an associate degree and a bachelor's degree. And then, of course, we have the new Emerge program that you created last year for graduate level programs. So you've got proponent testimony in front of you. We've had great success with from the advocacy. You have provided greater levels of funding for the tuition assistance program. There was a time, even as recently as 2018, when we were not able to provide the Guard members with full funding of their tuition and fees. And so we have now reached a point with the $5.4 million we have available where we are able to do that. So quite pleased to have that. And of course, we've got a new program. It's still in its early stages, but we do have, I think, over 30 students in the pipeline this spring for the Emerge program. And of course, the National Guard handles the eligibility for all of that, and then we get the student information, and we work with the schools then to provide the waivers and the funding for the students' tuition and fees. There are administrative efforts involved with it, and the amendments that you see in the bill were made at the request of our office, and they were rather technical, basically bringing up to date the statutory reference for how the not-for-profit independent schools are referenced to make it the same as other statutes. And then also, just to be very clear that the language in the statute specify that the tuition assistance program is provided to the institution, not to a student. So none of our programs that we administer for student financial aid do we award a check to a student. The money goes to the institution. So just want to make that clear in the statute. So happy to answer any questions from the financial aid point of view.
Very good. Thank you for that. Committee questions. Senator Gossage.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Elaine, I'm not seeing a fiscal note, so that tells me, I think it was mentioned earlier, no additional dollars will be spent for this.
Mr. Vice Chair, that is correct. We would absorb the administrative efforts of administering the additional or the dependent piece of it. There would be a little glitch for us in the timing of when we would know how the funding is allocated for Guard members first in the tuition assistance program, and then how we could get that to the dependents who've been made eligible, so.
But no state tax dollars.
We do have appropriations in place for these two programs, but we wouldn't need additional.
Thank you.
Just for this.
Senator Petty.
Thanks for being here, Elaine. And so does, excuse me, does the part when it comes to about eligible Guard member and including non-concurrent Guard members, would that impact your decision-making at all, or would that already been verified by the National Guard, the Kansas National Guard?
If I may, Senator Petty, that is correct. We rely on the information from the Guard to say this person is eligible, and we will rely on them to say this dependent is eligible. Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Senator Petty.
I do have a question for Lieutenant Colonel Marshall. And that just goes back to the eligible Guard member when they're non-concurrent. I know you referred to this earlier. So if I'm understanding what you said earlier, is that this is kind of a tool then you have for when you're out trying to talk to young people about joining the Guard. You can use this as a tool to say, hey, you join the Guard, now you could also get tuition to go on for a higher degree. Is that?
Mr. Chair, Senator, thank you, yes. So for example, I'll use law school. So our judge advocate general officers go recruit actively at law schools around the area. And when they talk to more junior, like first year law students, they can inform them of this program, say, we can't bring you into the Guard as a JAG because you haven't passed law school and passed the bar yet, but we can bring you in as an enlisted member and then pay for your school via the Emerge program if we pass this bill. And so that allows them to go recruit those people, bring them into the Guard in like a lower level position, and then eventually commission them once they finish their schooling under the program into the intended program, the professional program, if that helps answer that.
Actually raised a question for me. So I guess I wasn't quite certain about, so they could already be in a program now, you're trying to entice them to come into the Guard.
Correct.
In a program that you then would be able to say, hey, we can help you continue in this path.
Correct. That's one way we can recruit somebody into the program. And part of the stipulation under Emerge is in order to use the program, you already have to be accepted into the program too. So they would apply to the program, they would be accepted into it, and then they would apply to use Emerge through our education office.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, very good. Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, committee, we have no neutral. We have no opponents on this one either. Seeing nothing further, we will meet tomorrow. We'll be having a hearing on House Bill 2033 and on House Bill 2120 tomorrow as well. So hopefully the chair will be back. I apologize, I had to fill in for her today. But appreciate your time and attention. And with that, committee.